I'm a product manager with the Radius team. Welcome to the Radius community call for the month of August. I'll be hosting today's community call. So would like to cover some logistic here. This call is definitely for you. We are here to share latest about Radius, what's happening behind the scene and what's upcoming. Please utilize the chat to ask any questions you might have related to Radius. Also, if you have questions along the way, feel free to raise your hand and we'll unmute you. We will also have a dedicated Q&A at the end. So if you have questions and if you want to hold on to them until the end, you can do that as well. So quick preview on the agenda, share some updates on the community, roadmap, .49 release, and then have a couple of demos on the resource type enhancements. One is on the multiple API version support, and then we have a demo on the Radius resource type to resource type connections. So there's also a demo on contributing your first resource type and recipe. So I'll be doing a walkthrough of that. Quick reminder on the links. So Discord is your go-to space to ask questions and get involved with the community. We also have a Google group. We send community call invites and release notes. So we have a LinkedIn page. Link is attached here. Please subscribe to hear the latest news and updates about Radius. So this is pretty exciting. Radius will be participating at KubeCon Atlanta. So we got a talk accepted at KubeCon. So this is going to be a joint talk with Comcast. So Comcast has been a great partner both in terms of contributing and also influencing a lot of our design decisions. So they helped us deliver the great feature that we'll be reviewing some of the enhancements to, which is the Radius resource types. So this is going to be a joint talk between with Nick Beanham from Comcast and Jonathan from the Radius team. So this talk is going to be specifically about how Comcast leverages Radius in their internal developer platform. So this is pretty exciting. Mark your calendars and stay tuned for more. So a couple of new blog posts got published for this month. So the first one is an interesting one. It's about future-proofing your AI applications with Radius resource type. So you might have seen blogs and demos on the Radius resource types feature. So this blog post specifically goes into how Radius enables abstraction of the underlying AI model and infrastructure complexities from the developers who can just focus on building great Gen AI applications. So the developer doesn't have to worry about where exactly the model is hosted, what infrastructure configurations go with it, what types of practices that they need to follow to provision these models. So all of these are abstracted away from the developer. They can just use whatever curated set of models that the platform engineers have put together as part of their application. So they just interact with the application contract. The platform engineering does all the heavy lifting behind the scenes with the help of recipes set up for each of these models. So this blog post walks you through that experience with the help of a sample as well. So if you have any questions, reach out to us. So the second link is about contributing your first resource type and recipe. So this is fresh off the press. It's about how you can contribute your own resource types and recipes to this repo. So I'm going to cover a little bit in deep on how you can contribute to this repository. So that's about it. I'm going to pass it over to Will to give you some updates on the roadmap. Over to you, Will.
Yes, in an air-gapped environment. So this feature we took into developing because there was an enterprise user for Radius who came to us with this very specific requirement to be able to install and operate Radius in an environment that doesn't allow internet traffic, for example. So they have to pre-download all the binaries and be able to install and operate Radius based on those pre-downloaded binaries in this environment. So we're currently working through that, and everything's on a separate branch right now, but the goal is to kind of bring those in incrementally into the main branch and hopefully into a future release of Radius. So that's what this effort is tracking. And then a couple of things we've taken up into upcoming priorities as a part of our designing process right now. One of them is Radius plugin for Headlamp. So for those of you who don't know what Headlamp is, it's a open source project that builds a visualization of Kubernetes for you. And they have this kind of plugin architecture that you can bring in, Kubernetes-centric tools to enhance the graphical user interface for the Headlamp system. And we have a community member looking to contribute a Radius plugin for Headlamp. So that's currently underway, and I believe they're currently in a design phase to scope out the project and then proceed with developing. So we're excited for that, and hopefully can provide more updates on the progress of that in upcoming community meetings. And then the other new thing is recipe packs. So this was something that was originally in our accepted backlog, but we decided to pull it in because as we unpacked compute platform extensibility, because everything's going to be recipe driven, including all the traditional core resources like containers today that are not recipe driven, because in this new compute extensibility world, everything will be recipe driven, and thus having the ability to manage recipes in bulk and register recipes in bulk will be more important in this world. So we decided to bring recipe packs in as a part of that compute extensibility effort as a convenience feature and a feasibility feature for compute extensibility. So right now, recipe packs is in the designing phase. Hopefully we'll be able to get it into and start working on it into the development phase in the next month or two. And then the other two areas that are still in the design phase and being worked on is external data store for Radius. So basically bringing in Postgres to be the Radius data store. This item, I forgot to put a little GitHub icon there on this item. It's also something that is being contributed by the community. And then lastly, we have a set of Radius usability issues that we are wanting to kind of track and manage and deliver as a cohesive project. So think about like all the little paper cuts or the little Radius usability issues that make Radius just that much harder to use. We've bundled all those into the Radius usability roadmap item, and hopefully we'll be able to start chipping away at those in the upcoming weeks. So stay tuned for updates on those items. And I think that concludes the roadmap update. So I'll hand it back over to you, Reshma.
Thanks, Will. Let me bring up the presentation here. That's on roadmap. So wanted to share what we shipped as part of .49 release. So there were a lot of enhancements that went into Radius resource type. The first one is about connection support between resource types. For example, if you have a web service that connects to a PostgreSQL resource type, both of them are custom resource type. Now the PostgreSQL properties, after it gets provisioned, like the connection string, username, and password, they are like available as part of the connection to the recipe context. So this makes it easier for the platform engineers to reference these connection properties for creating secrets in recipes. So this is something that Nitya will be demoing in a bit. So we also added a way to like bulk create all the resource types using the rad resource type create command. So if you just specify all the resource types in an YAML definition and input it to the rad resource type create command, it bulk creates them all at once. So that was an enhancement. And then the third one was on the supporting multiple API versions. Earlier, the API version used to be a predefined date format. Now you can like use the current date of your choice, and you can have multiple API versions for the resource types as part of the schema as well. And then capabilities improvement was something that will covered as part of the roadmap update. So earlier we required support recipes as a property in the resource type schema definition, which indicated that the recipe support is required for the resource type. So this is now removed and recipe support is enabled by default. Um, if you want to create a resource type that doesn't require a recipe, then there is another capability called the manual resource provisioning. So this is useful in scenarios where your resource or your service is provisioned outside of Radius, and you are just exposing the metadata of that resource, for example, connection information of that resource to your developers while they're building Radius application. You could use this option to create the resource type. So those are pretty much the enhancement on Radius resource types. And the next feature is on customizing the contour support. So for people who've been using Radius, you know that contour gets installed as part of the Radius installation. So we've now like added support to disable that. If you're using your own ingress controller, you can disable the contour ingress controller. And if you are like having a custom version of it, you can also use a custom chart to install that. So these are some of the updates that went into the .49 release. Um, so yeah, I just wanted to call out a community contributor who had contributed to our last release. Thanks, Alex. So he was actually trying to set up Terraform recipes from a private Git repo and found out that the error message was not right when you do not give like the necessary information, basically the username and password for using secrets. So this error message was basically improved with this contribution. Thanks for that. Which brings me to the next slide, which is about contributing to Radius. So these are basically two links. One is on the Radius first issues, and the second one is on the Radius dashboard related first issues. So the first link covers all issues across the repos in Radius. So these are basically items that are like on the CLI side or requires like minimal like design related changes, or so these are basically small improvements on Radius and are like good items for you to pick up as a new contributor. And the second link is specifically on the front end side of things. So on the Radius dashboard, if you're interested to contribute, please check out those links, those issues as well. And if you have questions, feel free to use the contribution channel in the Discord. So that's where the Radius team is available. So if you have any questions related to these issues or anything at all related to Radius, you can ask them there. Okay, now on to the demo. So I'm going to pass it over to Nitya to demo on the composite recipes and connections for Radius resource types. Over to you, Nitya.
Thank you, Rishma. Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to demo how we can use composite recipes in our application, and also how connection between two Radius resource types work. Composite recipe is a recipe which is composed of Radius resource types. A Radius resource type is a type of resource which can be used to build your application. Radius supplies a few built-in resource types such as containers, gateways, and so on. And you can also bring in your own Radius resource types. Let me bring up the definition of application we're going to deploy today as part of demo. It is a to-do list application, and we're going to author this application in terms of web service resource type, which is going to connect to a PostgreSQL database. Here I have set up all the files that is needed for this application to work. And I have also configured the Radius environment with resources, with recipes that are necessary for these resource types to be created. We will be making use of two Radius resource types, one of which is the PostgreSQL, and the other resource type is web services. This is the application definition. We can see that it has a Radius resource type called web services, and that web service has a property called ingress. And you can see that when ingress is true, it's going to also deploy a gateway which is mapped to port named web, in addition to the container it's going to be deploying. And this resource type is connected to a PostgreSQL. Let me bring up and deploy the application. Before that, we have to create the resource types. In this release, we've also enhanced Radius resource type command create to be able to just take a manifest file and create all of the types specified in it instead of creating every resource type that needs to be created. So you can see by running this command, I have created the resource types we needed, which is basically the PostgreSQL and web service. I will also go ahead and publish these types so that the bicep extensions are created. Now we should be ready to deploy the application. I'll let that run while we go through the code. Like I just showed, we have the Radius resource web services type tied to a bicep recipe. This is a composite recipe which consists of only the built-in Radius resource types, but you can mix and match the built-in resource types with Radius resource types. Here we have a gateway and a container, and you can see if the developer sets ingress property to true, then we deploy a gateway. If we go back and look at the type definition for each of this, we have a PostgreSQL type definition that we are familiar with. We also have the new web services type. It has the environment and application, which is required by every UDT, every Radius resource type. We also define a connection because this resource type is going to connect to a PostgreSQL database. We have a property called ingress, which allows the developer to deploy conditionally a gateway. Rest of the properties are just manifest of a container resource type. Let's check if the application has deployed successfully. Here we see that the application is deployed successfully. Let me bring up the gateway's URL so that we can access it. I have to be on the VPN, so connecting to it. You can see the container is up and running. And this was a web services UDT, web services radius resource type, which is connected to a Postgres radius resource type again. Now, if we want to look at how two radius resource types connected together enable us to author more effective recipes, we can enhance this recipe to have a secret. This is the recipe of the parent radius resource type, which is going to connect to the child resource type, which is a Postgres. When we connect them, we enrich the context, the recipe context of the parent resource type with properties of the connected resource. That is how, in the recipe of web services, we are able to create a secret which holds the connected resource PostgreSQL's password. Let's take a look at the secret created. Because secret is created successfully, and we could decode this to verify it is the password we provided in the recipe.
Vishwa, why don't you take over?
Yeah, I can. Thanks, Reshma. Yeah, hello everyone. I will be doing a demo on multiple API version support for radius resource types. Let me share my screen. Can you all see my screen?
Super small.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Is it better?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so here is a simple example of a manifest file to create Postgres resource type. So earlier, when you are creating a template for a template for a resource type, we know that we need to provide this API version 2023-10.1 preview as the required API version for any resource type creation. But now with the multiple API support, we can have any API version that supports bicep versioning format. So basically, it is an year, month, and date, and this is an option. This is an optional word that we could use, which means that we can use any other API version and also that multiple API version for the same resource type. Uh, so let's say for this resource type, we can see that these are the fields that are defined for Postgres and application and environment as the required fields. Let's say as a platform engineer, now I want uh, to create a Postgres database for a global scope, not for application and environment, something like for organization level and have it used by multiple applications. What I could just do is create a new API version. With the state or and define a new schema. I'm going to copy the same, but will not have application and environment as the required field, so that this will be deployed to like global scope. Yeah, so we can have a different schema altogether with a new API version. If required, we can edit the fields for that resource type as well. So you can see I have two API versions. So I'm going to create this resource type. You can add resource type.
Well, we can't see that at all.
Uh, wait,
Okay.
is it good? I can test it.
Yeah, it's good.
Uh, and create Postgres type from file. But I specify here. Okay, so you can see that both API versions are created. This is the one that was previous, and this is the newly created API version. We can list this. And see that uh, these two API versions have been created. And in the bicep file, the only changes that you could do is change this API version if you want to use the new API version that we created now. And if it is not required, we can get rid of application and environment. So, and also the other change, one more changes that we added is for rad resource type show command. So we updated the rad resource type show to show details about the schema for each API versions. So now you could see all the properties for each API version for that resource type and the properties like required and read-only properties for each of these fields. So this will be helpful for the developers when they are defining the resource and trying to refer this resources. So let's say in this container, they are trying to, the developers are trying to refer to the properties of the Postgres resource type. They can say it using rad resource type show command and have the details of the schema. Yeah, all right, then, yeah, that was that.
was about radius resource type contribution experience. So let me get started with the repo first. So as most of you know, resource type opens up an extensibility point in Radius where you could bring your own custom resource type definitions and then create recipes for that and deploy it via Radius. So one of the core mission of Radius is that it wants to enable platform engineers to build powerful internal developer platforms with curated catalog of resource types. While Radius ships some resource types as part of its install, like out of the box, like containers, gateways, secrets, there needs a shared library wherein the community and others can bring in their own set of resource types and mature those resource types over time with the help of community and also share these resource types with others, right? So we have created this repo on the resource types and recipes to house the resource types and recipes. Um, as a shared library for people to both contribute and discover new resource types as they get created. So this repository houses three main things, as I said: resource types and recipes, schema definitions and recipes, both in Bicep and Terraform. And then recipe packs is also something that would be part of this repo. So recipe packs feature is currently in the design phase as well, mentioned as part of his roadmap updates. And one of the things that I wanted to just quickly walk you through is the repository structure. So we've categorized the resource types by the functionality of the resource type. For example, if you are looking to contribute to a Redis resource type, then it automatically goes into the category of data. If it's a Dapper resource type, then it goes into the category of Dapper. And inside the folder for each resource types, there are three main things. One is the documentation of the resource type and the recipe support. And then the second one is basically the schema file, which Nitya was showing a little bit in her demo, the types.yaml, which is basically the schema definition for the resource type that houses all the properties, API versions, and everything that is required for the interface. And then the recipes. The recipes are categorized by the platform. In the case of Redis, they are categorized by either Azure, AWS, or Kubernetes. And inside each of these repositories, you will have the specific recipes, either Bicep recipe or Terraform recipe. So this is actually the overall repository structure. Now I'm going to go into the contribution guide, which talks about the paths which you can take to contribute to this repo. So the first thing is about contributing resource type and recipes, and the second is about contributing issues in this recipe. Recipe packs is something that we will enable in the future. So for contributing resource types and radius recipes, there are step-by-step guidelines here. So before we go into the guidelines, I wanted to just give you some context on the maturity level for these contributions. So the way we've categorized these contributions are into three stages. The first stage is alpha. So what you can bring in here is you can bring in any sort of experimental things that you've been doing with radius resource type as a contribution. So the main requirements here is you need a resource type schema that passes all the validation, the schema validation, and then a single recipe. So it could be a Bicep recipe or a Terraform recipe, and it could be for any cloud provider or platform. So a resource type schema and a single recipe, and then some basic documentation and a manual evidence that this resource type works with an application. So this is an alpha stage contribution requirement. So you can bring in this contribution to this repository. You can submit a PR for that. And then as we stand up the infrastructure for testing and CI/CD, we would like to work with you to make this contribution or to mature this contribution to meet the beta stage and the stable state. So the beta stage is mostly around having multi-platform support, having recipes for all the three platforms, and having recipes for both Bicep and Terraform. And then we have some kind of testing available to validate that the resource types and recipes work over the changes with radius or like over the like over any external changes as well. So that's beta level. And then the stable level is actually like getting these resource types and recipes to a state where it's production ready and it could be used for your production deployments. So yeah, so the entry level or the newest level for contributors to get started with is the alpha level, and it matures over these stages. So that's on the maturity levels, and on like some of the guidelines that I would like to highlight is basically following the schema guidelines for the resource type schema. So everything is just called out here, wherein the name, so this will become namespace pretty soon. Vishwa is working on a change to update this to namespace. So the namespace should follow a specific format wherein it should start with radius and then have a category associated with that. And then the resource type name should follow the camel case convention. So all of those requirements are highlighted here, and like keeping the schema very simple and then very descriptive would be helpful. And then the recipes guidelines also include documentation to radius recipe concept, and this like takes you to the how to guide to author your first radius recipe. So as a prerequisite, if you are new to all of these things, you can use these documentation to familiarize yourself with the recipe concept, with how to write bicep and terraform recipes. So there's example attached here. And then there are some guidelines that helps you structure these recipes. And then a documentation that you can like provide to the community for discovery, as in like what resource type definitions are available and what recipe support is available for each of these resource type. So that's pretty much on the creation part. But before you submit, just make sure to go over this testing guide to test these resource types and recipes end to end with a sample application and provide some kind of a screenshot or a CLI output of whether this resource type works with the radius application. And then before you submit, just go over this contribution checklist. This is a repeat of all the guidelines that I just showed, just making sure that one last time all these requirements are met and you can like submit your contribution. So it's pretty simple, like whatever contribution or whatever things that you're looking to contribute, just make sure that you like have a simple resource type schema and a recipe available. We are happy to work with you, the Radius maintainers, and the community. Like we are happy to work with you to mature these contributions over time. And then, for example, if you are clueless to what you want to contribute, you can go over the issues. I think this was down for a bit, but yeah. So you can go over the set of issues. For example, this issue already has a reference to an Azure Bicep recipe, which is available in the recipes repo. So you just have to register it to a Radius resource type definition and test it out with a sample application. So if you just wanted to get started with how to define these, then this is a good issue to get started with. So there's going to be more in this set. Um, we are going to add like all the portable resource types that we have today, basically the SQL DB, RabbitMQ, Dapper related resources. So there's going to be more issues here. And then each of them will have like all the details and then the acceptance criteria, which is pretty much similar to what we require for the alpha stage contribution. So that's on the contributions side of things. And there's also a blog that goes through this experience end to end. So, so this gives a pretty detailed walkthrough on like how you can like contribute your first resource type and recipe to the repo. So yeah, that's on the contribution side of things. Any questions? Anything anybody wants to add? Okay. Yeah, that brings us to the end. So it's just a Q&A slide that I have. If anybody has any questions. Feel free to ask them. I'm going to stop the recording now.